one of the things that I think we have to talk about is that choice should not be something reserved for middle class and affluent families. Nobody would question if you decided that your child was going to go to a private school versus a CPS school. You just have that choice. I think poor families have that choice as well. And so what has happened is the district has become much more transparent about school performance. One thing, and this is a controversial topic, but we know back in 2012 when the district closed up to almost 50 schools, when we went out to community meetings, in many cases, parents didn't even know that the school was a low-performing school. So let's start with that. So one of the things we committed to was being more transparent about our school quality policy rating. And because that information is so public, now people understand it. You see more parents exercising choice. And it's not choice because there is, you know, a group of people with kind of a pinky in the brain style plan behind the scenes making it work. Parents are more discerning. You don't have to have a college degree to look online and see the level of a school and make a choice. But with that said, there are people who choose their neighborhood schools or choose schools that may be historically underperforming for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's the school that their families attended. It's the school that's closest to them. And traveling, you know, you can't travel. You had a family of 4, you can't travel all over the city and pay for that. And we do have a responsibility to make sure that those schools are high-performing schools. But we also have a responsibility to make sure when schools aren't performing that some type of action is taken. I welcome people to visit some of the schools, and I know some are represented today. I walk through a lot of different schools, and I know that when I walk through a school where the enrollment has fell below, in our case, we've studied this, 270, I know that students are not getting the same experience that students are getting if they have, you know, a fuller student body, which affords them more student-based budgeting. And at some point, there is a place where we have to balance out action versus, you know, continuing with the status quo, which ultimately does not serve students. For me, every year matters. Every year that a child is in a bad situation, or if they don't have a great teacher or whatever, or not even a teacher because some of these schools are hard to staff and there are vacancies that go on for a while, to me, that child is set up on a trajectory that's going to take more support and more intervention to get them back on the right track. And so here in Chicago, I think that we have to deal with that issue. There was just a study published, and I'll put this out there, where it said we had over 100,000 extra seats. That's a big deal. We have 100,000 more seats than we have students because the birth rate in Chicago has fallen dramatically. There are far more millennials who live here, and they are, as the CEO says, walking dogs and not carriages. It's the truth. That's the business we're in. And we see a great outward migration, in particular in Black communities, because of the violence here in Chicago. So from a public policy perspective, these are hard problems that have to be solved, and that's why the district is engaged in like trying to have conversations about what's going on, because it's not as easy as saying, you know, I have people, we talk about segregation, this is the last point I'll make, or integrating our schools. People say, well, you can change policy. Well, a lot of districts have tried, and I think that our magnet and gifted schools and selective schools, that's really the only proven strategy we've had for integrating schools, and it hasn't even worked in every case because Chicago, like New York, is segregated based on economic lines and racial lines. In some schools we open trying to promote more integration, it just doesn't happen. And then we have cases like some of the cases you may follow where you have 2 communities right next to each other. One school that is hollowed out, one school that is bursting at the seams, and the only reason why they don't connect is because nobody wants to talk about people not wanting to go to school with poor Black children. So I think if we're gonna have a serious conversation, we have to have a serious conversation about race and class and how that drives choice in some of the decisions, not just that policymakers make, that average people, you know, going about their daily lives make.